Test. Is this thing on? This thing on? All right. This week on Gymwright Live, we go over the 3 Ps: programs, pricing, and policies. Not to mention, we have a big announcement for you, so check it out. Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Gymwright Live. I am your host, Marcus Guersey, and with me today we have the lovely Miss Jessica Webster, our co-host and marketing maven here at Gymwright. And we're going to get in some pretty juicy stuff today regarding programs, pricing, policy. This is something we get a ton of questions on, not to mention we have a pretty big announcement today. So excited to get into the show. Jessica, thank you for being on with us.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed your dance moves during the drum solo there.
You like that? I've been working on those.
I feel like we should be recording those. Maybe even better than the show.
we don't even need to talk gym stuff. They would only see what happens off camera.
Right. I don't know if anybody's ready for that.
No.
Thanks for having me on, guys. So today we were talking about, Marcus said, the 3 Ps of programs, pricing, and policies. The flow of this show is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to facilitate the conversation. We have Marcus, who's probably, as most of you know, the head gym growth specialist here at Gymwright. And so he works with hundreds and hundreds of gym owners on creating a foundation of everything they do in starting a gym. These 3 Ps are so important because, there's something that you set in the very beginning of when you start a business. And it's something that if you get them right, you can literally have a successful gym business, at a park, through a boot camp, in your garage, in a huge facility, if you get these things right. So, I'm excited to get started on this stuff with you guys.
Awesome. Thanks for the intro, Jess. Yeah, guys, we're going to do something a little different this week. We posted some questions in our private Facebook group, The Network, which this is obviously airing live in, but if you're catching this after the fact or seeing this on YouTube weeks later, we put some questions up regarding each of these 3 subjects, got some great questions from you, and we're going to go through as many of those as we can today, as well as let you guys in on an exciting announcement that we have as Gymwright. So we have been working tirelessly for the last almost a year on developing a new program for our community. And this is based on our experiences over the last many years and working with gym owners. We have had our web and marketing and automation platform. We have had the older version of the business coaching stuff that we did. And we are now excited to announce that we have a brand new business coaching program available starting today. That said, it's not publicly available yet. We are starting with an initial beta group. And so what this means is that we're going to be starting with 15 gym owners who are motivated to make some change in their business and are ready to turn a profit, get better lead acquisition or lead generation, conversion of those leads, average client value increase, referrals. We cover the entire thing, and it is a brand new program, and people who participate in this program are going to get some special bonuses as well. We'll get into more of that a little bit later on in the show. But where we're going to start here today is by addressing what we're talking about. So these 3 programs, pricing, policies, like Jessica mentioned, these are absolutely critical to get right, and often are really kind of just phoned in and kind of treated almost as whatever the guys down the street are charging, I'll just match that or be $5 cheaper or $5 more, and I'm going to find a contract or policy service agreement, whatever, that I either got in the affiliate forum or from the guy down the street again. And although when we are approaching this as an entrepreneur and hey, I've got to get something up, I've got to get started, let's go, I need to start selling, which I completely understand. When you misstep in these, it can cause years and years of frustration, and ultimately often leads to why a lot of gym owners give up. Is because they're just simply not able to succeed with the core structure they have around what they're selling, how they're charging, and the policies they have regarding cancellations, holds, renewals, and so on. So we're going to dive into some of this stuff today. And figure out exactly how we can increase your gym's profit, shape the culture of your community, define your way of life, and communicate critical messages about the value of our services. Jessica, I know Usually I would ask you the question, or I would ask the guest the question I'll ask you today. I know I just kind of covered the points here, but why should a gym owner really care about this?
Well, we can dive in a little bit to all of those points. First and foremost, you need to see a profit in order to continue doing this. Running on passion and purpose can only really work if you're making enough to feel really secure about your current state and your future. And in that, it obviously defines your way of life. Like, I have a personal story. There was a point not so long ago for myself where I was 100% doing what I love doing as my primary job. But the month to month revenue was so inconsistent that it was just creating this like anxiety about what the next month would bring. I was doing project by project, so nobody was on contracts. And even though I was making more money on average than I ever had, even with a consistent paycheck, this leveling of anxiety really started to define my way of life. And so I had to revisit these 3 Ps myself, getting people on contracts, creating a different pricing structure, even tweaking my services around completely, so that I could have this way of life that I really wanted, which I found was way more important than the dollars. Then also a lesser known thing is that it kind of cultivates this culture of your community. So when you get really clear on your policies and the goals of your gym, you're clearly and effectively communicating to people that while we have a ton of fun here, this is a legit business. And by communicating that early, you're cultivating a respect for the policies that you have in place, which may deter people from coming to you and just wanting to cancel on their contracts. You know, most people don't do that with other legitimate businesses. Right. So communicating that effectively through policies is really important and, incredibly helpful. And then along the lines of programming and pricing, there's also this opportunity here to create a really cool story around why your prices are the highest in the area. It has obviously to do with the programs and the coaching, but that can also symbolize a deeper meaning. So it can be something that people are really proud of and like intrigued with instead of irritated by. So getting, again, really clear on your story will help communicate these super critical messages about the value of your services. So hopefully reasonable pricing will never be an issue.
Love it. All right. Well, let's dig in. Where are we going to start?
Let's start with programs.
All right.
So I'm going to pull up my notes here on some questions that we had from the network. The first one would be, how did you decide, Joe Hashi, he's the president of Synergy Athletics. Hi, Joe. Hope you're watching. Joe specializes on one service. So he wanted to be the very best in that service and doesn't want to chase too many rabbits at once, which is understandable. But he'd like to know more about the benefits of offering non-training services like nutrition and body scanning, like in-body services.
Got it. Okay. So, that question, specifically is really kind of referring more to like the upsell layer, and more of like the premium service suite rather than the core service suite. So for one, we want to make sure that we're identifying what's in what category. And the challenge that a lot of people will have is that they'll start to focus on the premium add-ons and upsells prematurely, and that prematurely means simply that they have not yet mastered the core service suite yet. And the core service suite, which is your main membership offering, your core offering, that's really the bread and butter of what you do. That's really what is going to help you select which one is going to work best. Now, in our industry, if we're, let's say, talking specifically about the CrossFit gym or a box gym, we don't need to have a lot of services. So Joe's already on the right track in having one core service, and then really, when it comes to like the different pricing strategies and all that, we can get into the nuances of that a little bit later in the show, but have one core service, and then say, okay, well, based on who my target client is. So if you have not yet identified who your brand hero is, this is actually where you need to start. And we want to identify who it is that we actually can and want to serve best. We form our core services based on who we are and what our strengths are and what strengths we have that can fulfill those needs. That's going to determine our core service. And then we can say, now what would be the next logical step in that progression, right? So for a lot of us as a CrossFit gym, a lot of people go right to personal training because that's kind of what's been around the longest in this industry. It's easy to understand, higher dollar per hour. But that's not actually a good fit for more people than you may think. Another option is custom program design, which is a great upsell. That was personally where we focused as Active, and allowed us to scale and raise our average client value tremendously. And there's reasons we chose that as well. But when we're talking about things like nutrition, in body, so we're talking now body composition, in my opinion, this is actually the lowest hanging fruit, because when you look at what gets your clients the best results, it's not just training, right? Training's really only about half of the equation. The other half is nutrition, right? So as we all know, you can't out-train a shitty diet. So when you put the energy into also providing a good nutrition support system, that's obviously going to be complementary to your core offering. So now people are going to get better results. It all makes sense to people. But we want to choose what that upsell is based on not just what sounds good or what looks good on paper dollars wise. We have to take a look too at what our goals are as an owner and as a manager of a team, because you may think personal training is a great idea, but the problem is that you immediately tie up more hours for whether it be yourself or for your staff. So that may not be the best way to go. So we want to make sure we look at, say, okay, well, how many staff members do I have? Is this the best use of their time? Is this going to potentially put them into an overworked state, or is this going to, balance them out? So I'll give you an example. For me at Active, I preferred having a smaller team that I provided more hours to. My goal was to provide careers for my coaches so that I can create better coaches, because ultimately the coaches are my product, right? The nice facility and having more rowers and all that is all secondary to you having phenomenal coaches who love people, love what they do, and are excited for every single class that they coach. That is number one. So I put all of my energy into developing that. So we said, okay, well, how can we make sure that happens? Well, for one, I wanted my coaches to not have to also have a bunch of other jobs. So I wanted to be their primary focus, so that they weren't worried about running off to some other job or running in and taking their Starbucks, uniform off and putting on their coach hat to do their thing. So we said, okay, well, how can we get more of their time? So we provided more hours. So less coaches, more hours to them, more involvement. Step one. Step two then was saying, okay, well, now that I have them pretty busy, let's talk about what my options are for my upsell. Now, immediate go-to was personal training. However, when looking at my team, that was actually not a great idea, because now my coaches are just going to be wrecked because they're already coaching anywhere from 3 to 4, sometimes even 5 classes in a single day, because we're talking a full-time job here. And then also doing personal training was not going to serve them well. So I want to do something to balance them out, which also would allow me to still raise my average client value, which is why we selected going with our custom programming option, because it also was in alignment with our core philosophies on taking a far more individualized approach compared to competitors, where it was just like, hey, we have a great GPP workout, everyone come and work out. Our whole angle was the individualization angle. So we wanted to make that, it allowed us to build our case by making that our upsell. It was mentioned in the very initial sales conversation that we had, and that's how we pulled that whole thing together. So, Joe, you want to be the best at what you do, not chase too many rabbits at once. Figure out what your one upsell is going to be that you think you can knock out of the park, make sense for who you are and what your clients, your ideal clients want. And then choose, just like you created one core service, create one core upsell, and make sure that it is designed on the back of your core offering so that it is a natural next step. The next piece to that would be to make sure that you are teasing that upsell in that core program. So for example, if you're going to go down the nutrition route, making sure that, for example, when someone becomes a member, that everyone starts off with your nutrition jumpstart program, so that you introduce information. It's a conversation starter for you to also say, hey, here's something for you to get started. But if you want some help with this, because I know accountability is a huge factor, it was for me too, we do offer individualized nutrition support as well to help you set specific goals, measure, blah, blah, blah. And you can go into your whole deal from there. So,
great. So Marcus, it sounds like we have a couple of variables that people are working with here. There's what can your staff handle and what do they want to do? Yep. And there's looking at your brand hero. I know that brand hero is something that we cover in depth in the foundations program. Mm-hmm. But I was hoping maybe we could get a little sneak peek as to like how this exercise goes, because I know that most people don't know what a brand hero is. I think we define it as a fictional representation of your ideal member, based on a true person that you love having in.
Right.
What would you do? Like, what would be something simple for a gym owner to do to really define what that person needs in terms of leveling up their fitness or wellness based on their profile?
Well, the way that I like to start with this is, and this is assuming you already have, at least a handful of members, is to take a look at your member base and say, okay, well, who are the people that I actually, first of all, that I enjoy having around, right? People that I actually enjoy their energy. When they're in my classes, I'm looking forward to them. I'm like, oh, this is going to be a great class. Greg's here today. So people that you're excited to be around, you guys just vibe. Next, they can afford your services. They value what you value most, right? So whatever your shtick is and what gets you excited about teaching fitness and whatever your USP is, that's also what they value most. They have great attendance. They get great results. They can afford your services. You roll out a new shirt, they buy it. You put on a workshop, they're there. You go and do bowling night, they're showing up with 3 buddies. Those are the people, when you look at your existing client base, figure out who those people are, and just right there already, you have your short list now of potential brand heroes. And then we go through some exercises to help refine that down and to choose, and we put them into a few different categories to help you understand your market a little bit better.
Very cool. Okay, what would you say for somebody who has a few too many services in their suite? They have some people that are attending, let's say powerlifting, but it's just not really worth it. Mm-hmm. What would you do with that type of client?
Too many rabbits. So that's actually really common, because what we end up doing is we start off actually intuitively. We're actually better off when we first start, where we're like, hey, I'm just going to do this one thing, do it really well. And then you see the guy down the street offers an endurance class, an Oli class, a power class, a mobility class. And you're like, well, crap, in order to compete, I have to offer all that stuff too. So you start rolling out all these different programs, but they're not really your core competency. And they're also not getting the love and the attention that they would actually need to thrive, or to see if that's actually going to work or not with your community. So you kind of just roll it out. Here's a class. There's a class. So what I would do is I would sit down and say, okay, well, what is it, first of all, that we do best, right? What is our core service? And then say, all right, now, are these other services, are they detracting from us being able to fulfill or do that better? So if we had, let's say, the energy that we're doing into offering those other programs, okay, are we able, if we took that energy and put that more into our core program, could we make that core program better? As in, basically figure out, are those detracting from my core service offering? And also seeing how people are responding to it. More often than not, you have a couple of people who are in those classes and they're like, oh, I love your Oli class. I love your mobility class. But it's the same 2 or 3 people. And you're like, dude, I've got 175 people and 172 of them don't care, right? So if you have too many going on, what I would do to kind of soften the blow for those few people who do really like them is I would say, hey, you know what, we want to make sure that we have a minimum attendance. And we did this at Active, where we talked about this more frequently. We're like, hey, we're going to try this program, and if we can consistently have 4 or more people in our class, then we'll keep the program. And if it drops below that, then it's kind of in a probationary mode. We may eliminate it temporarily, and we'll bring it back if the demand is there. And it's not a great conversation to have with people, but most people can understand too that, hey, it doesn't make sense for us to offer the program. We were excited to roll it out. We think we're going to redesign this program, so we're going to shut it down temporarily. We may roll it out differently in the future and just edit it back down. And much like, taking anything away, it feels to you as the gym owner like, oh my God, I'm going to get this this crap storm of negative PR in my community. But the reality is if you're just honest and you're like, hey, look, we rolled this thing out. We had high hopes for it in this form. It's not working this way. We want to make sure that everything that we offer you guys is top notch. So we're taking it back to the drawing board. Sorry for any inconvenience. We're still going to do regular workshops where we're going to address this stuff. We're going to try to build more mobility into our classes. There's things you can kind of do, and then just explain to them like what's going on. And if they're a good fit for your program, if they are one of your ideal members, they'll understand. If not, they're probably actually not the best fit for your community anyway.
I totally agree with that. Over communicating in this circumstance is always better. You never want people to fill in the gaps on their own, because that's how rumors can start, right? Oh, is the gym going out of business? Oh, they don't care about Oli or something like that. So yeah, clearly defining that story before you roll out anything, and really spending a long time on communicating that in a way that is in line with your vision and in a very professional way would be helpful for this case.
No doubt. And before we move on too, hopefully that is also then a lesson to you in what you roll out. Right? So that you're far more careful about what you roll out rather than just throwing everything against the wall, seeing what sticks. That also wears your community out. So although you may think, hey, that's just how I operate, like that's how I do things. I try 10 different things. I throw them all up. One of them sticks. I kill the other 9. That may be great for you and that may be your process, but that's not okay for your clientele. So hopefully the exercise of having to edit that back and having a couple of those harder conversations is going to teach you the lesson too, that I'm going to be very thoughtful about what I roll out. And when I roll it out, I would roll it out saying, hey, we're going to try something new and see how people respond. If you guys love it, we'll put more into it. If it doesn't stick, we may pull it back or redesign it. I just wanted to put that out there as we're rolling this out. This is a trial. And when you roll something out that way, and by the way, you're also now being more honest, right? That again goes back to that transparency factor, that if it does stick, people are going to be stoked because you tried something new, it worked, you took their feedback and then you leaned into it. But then they also will understand if you decide to pull it 3 months later when your endurance program has one person in it 1 day a week and they're like, well, why did you kill the program? It's like, dude, you were the only one in the class for the last 2 weeks. Like we said, if it's not, if we're not getting consistent attendance and people aren't buzzing about it, then we may pull it and go back to the drawing board.
Very cool. So I'm thinking we move forward onto pricing because we're already at 20 minutes. I know that this is a really important segment here.
Oh, yeah.
But if you guys have any questions specifically on program suites or anything like that, just leave us a comment. And if we have any time at the end of the show, we'll answer it. If not, we'll answer after the show. And then friendly reminder, all of this is covered in the Foundations program, obviously one-on-one with Marcus if you guys had any more unique situations. Okay, pricing. So this was the one that we had the most engagement with on the network.
The big question.
First question, yeah. How did you determine your gym's pricing structure, and did you create it based on competition, or was there a method to the madness? So that's just kind of like the general question out there. Like, where do we even start? Do you look at what is normal in terms of CrossFit boxes in your area? Do you charge what you feel comfortable charging? So I guess we can start with if there is some structure into actually creating pricing, or if it's just like guess and see what happens.
Well, it's this is probably the most commonly debated and questioned subject in kind of the ecosystem of the business, because there's quite a bit that goes into doing this well, and it is not thrown together as haphazardly as most of us initially may think, which is like, well, hey, what does everybody else in the area charge? And I'll just be right around there. Now, although that may be on surface level, that may be an okay starting point, if you didn't also consider the other things that we're going to talk about here and the math doesn't work, although you may think like, hey, we're being competitive, remember, it does not matter what everybody else is doing if they're doing it wrong. And just know this, most gym owners are doing it wrong. They are guessing. They are doing this based on just intuition, which is not based on experience or understanding of the mechanics of the business that they're even running. So be very, very, very careful in taking this type of advice or copying what someone else is doing just because it looks like they have their shit together from the outside in. You guys know that running a gym, there's more to it than on the surface. And so when you look at someone's pricing and it looks like they're doing great, I've seen gyms with 900 members, and I'm talking CrossFit gyms with multiple locations, 900 bodies, and they are not profiting. This owner was running themselves into the ground, managing 40 plus coaches, 3 different locations, killing themselves, not making shit. So don't look at and make any assumptions. And so that said, if you're just copying the person down the street, this should hopefully help you out a ton. And obviously part of the program is us actually going through these exercises with you and actually guiding you on fixing your pricing structure so that you are actually profitable, priced appropriately for yourself based on your goals for your business, the needs of the business, and also who your target demographic is. So let's get into it here. So it actually starts all the way back in regards to the vision and what your why even is in this business, right? So we need to take a look at like, what is it that you're looking to accomplish in this business, and not just for yourself as a business owner, but for your staff, for your members, and make sure that you're really clear on what you're trying to accomplish. Next step, make sure that you are clear on your USP. That's your unique selling proposition. So what is it that makes you different, better, etc.? Right? Don't just go into it saying, well, we're just going to do the same thing and be $5 less. Wrong. You're racing to the bottom. Good luck. You need to have a strong why that gets you out of bed, and something that's going to resonate with your target client, something that excites them on a deep level, so that you guys are on the same page for something on the bigger picture. Now, once you're clear on the vision for yourself, for your staff, for your members, the why, the unique selling proposition, now we need to identify what kind of business is it that I actually even want to run, right? So I'll give you an example. When we're talking to CrossFit gym owners, most of the time when we initially do our strategy sessions, when someone inquires about working with us, one of the questions I ask is like, well, what do you want this thing to look like? What does success look like to you? Most of the time they come at me with some huge member number, like I want 300 members, 400 members, 600 members. And then one of my next questions is basically, well, what do you want this thing? What's most important to you in this? And like, well, I want to know everybody. You know, what makes us better is the personal relationships and the connection with each and every member. I know everyone's spouse's names, kids' names. I know where they work, and that's really, really important to me. Those are two opposing forces. You are not going to be, and not that there are not exceptions to this, but most people are not able to accomplish a 300-400 member gym and have an extremely personal experience. There are outliers, there are exceptions, but don't base your decision on that, right? We have something we understand known as Dunbar's Law. That is the idea that we cannot successfully manage more than 150 meaningful relationships at any given time. Well, now, if having those meaningful relationships with each and every member is important to you, you need to make sure that you're choosing a business model that's the same, right? So if you want to really have rich relationships with your members and it not be this like constant chasing your tail feeling of like, I'm just trying to keep up, I can't even remember everybody's name, like those are two different business models. So we need to identify which way we want to go. Neither is right or wrong. You need to choose which one's more important to you, right? So if your goal, for example, is to ultimately get yourself out of a lot of the day-to-day and maybe even out of the business completely and focus on other projects, the higher volume game or the less personal game is probably going to be a better route for you versus that super personal connection. Like I have a meaningful relationship with each and every person there. That's going to be extremely difficult for you to extract yourself from down the road. So you got to take that long-term vision into account here and choose the right model. Then we want to figure out, okay, well, now that we understand that model, if I'm going for lower volume, higher quality, more meaningful, now we're going for a higher quality product. So then we also understand perceived value and make decisions based on, well, when people get the cheap thing, they're always going to assume it's not the best. And so when you're trying to do the best and be the cheapest, you're screwing yourself, and you're actually screwing your member too, because they're going to have this skewed, like, it's this like, conflict internally around like, how is it so good and yet it's the cheapest one, and it just doesn't make sense for people. So people actually feel better about paying more for something, and if it's the more expensive or even the most expensive thing, if you can get the value to sink in with them. And then we teach that in how to sell and position your services as well. So
yeah, actually there was somebody in that thread of the pricing that was mentioning that he intentionally sought out to be the most expensive gym on the block or in the city. And I think that was a really ballsy and pretty cool move just because of that reason.
Okay. Yeah, it is. It's for sure by design. We did the same thing with Active. We intentionally became, and this was actually a decision we came to probably about a year and a half or 2 years in, where we set out to be the most expensive in the area. We raised our prices dramatically when we realized that the initial game we set out to play, which was the volume game, our goal was to get to 300 members, which we did, and then we didn't like what we saw. And so we said, okay, well, we we did this exercise kind of retroactively implementing all these things and saying, okay, well, we actually want to tweak this. And this was because we really went down the whole OPEX road and individualized training, realized that was what we were really passionate about. That's how we wanted to reposition the business, not to mention our market here in Southern California was hyper competitive at the time, boxes on every corner. So this is the road that we went down. And we loved it because it's people like, well, why are you so much more expensive than the guy down the street? It was actually a great conversation starter on what our values were. And we actually used it to our advantage in the sales process.
Very cool. So after somebody goes through a lot of these more qualitative bits, like figuring out your why, understanding what makes you different, and really understanding like what kind of life you want to live inside of this gym because you're going to be living there for a while. What are some of the more quantitative bits of data that they would need to put together?
Right. So the next game is to identify now all the costs necessary to execute that experience, right? So if my goal is I want to have a gym with 175 members that are, and we're known for being the best in the area. We've got, we do regular check-ins with our athletes. We have a very personalized approach. We have workshops that are included on a quarterly basis. We do monthly events. We do all these things. I have a vision for what I want to do. Now you need to sit down and basically figure out what does it cost to actually execute that. And don't forget to make sure that you're factoring in the taxes, the annual affiliate dues if you're a registered CrossFit affiliate, employment taxes, right? So how many staff members would it take to execute that? And this is where you can revisit like how much time and what roles do I want within this business, short term versus long term. These are all factors now that we're pulling all this information together. Equipment repairs, ongoing education, training, meetings with staff. These are all costs you want to factor in. And it's okay if you're looking at this going, holy crap, that's way more than I thought. That's the actual cost to execute, rather than doing some ballpark that's way lower than the actual number, which is what most people do. They're like, no problem. So if I just sell 50 memberships at $150, I'm going to be rolling in it. They didn't factor in what it actually costs to run the business, right? Utilities, your cell phone bills, and so on. Not to mention your time, right? Which is the next step. You need to determine your salary and then add that into the cost of doing business, because your salary is not the profit. Right? Profit is the next thing we're going to address. Your salary, you being there, especially if you're a younger gym, you are the lifeblood of this thing. And if you think that you're going to be able to work for free and just hope that it works out at some point, good luck. You'll be hitting burnout between 2 to 3 years, and it's all downhill from there. And so we need to make sure that we're factoring in at least a livable salary for you to be able to pay your bills. We don't need to be driving a new Land Rover yet, or be putting, $2,500 a month into savings every month yet. Look at it from, okay, well, what is the minimum I need in order to survive and be able to do this well, right? So I can pay my rent, I can pay my food, I can, get regular, I can have a coach to help me with my training or whatever it is, whatever the essentials are, factor that stuff in. Then we move down to determining your desired profit. Desired profit, usually anywhere between 10 and 20% down the road once the business is thriving, right? So we need to look at the big picture. What is it when we hit capacity at 175? What would that number look like? And then we can reverse engineer our way back down to the smaller milestones. And oftentimes it starts with just a smaller percentage, but don't do the whole like, I'm just going to start with a micro percentage. Build profit in from the get-go. It'll be proportionate to just how many people you have. Don't have no profit and no margin in your membership and just, we'll figure out how to make money later. You have to be able to make money day one off of that first member that you have. Now, your expenses may override that because hey, I've got rent, I've got this, I've got 2 members. But just build it in, because there's going to be a threshold where once you pass, let's say, hey, 40 members, I've now got all my bills covered, and now every person that comes in is contributing to bringing that average down while having built-in profit from the get-go. So determine your profit goal. Once we have that identified, add all that together, and now you have your total of what it costs to run this business. And what I would do is I would go to my target of 175 and figure out, okay, now I've got my cost of running at 175, and do the math to now break it down and say, okay, here's what my cost per person is. Here's what my costs are. Here's what my margin looks like. We go through a whole money mapping exercise in the Foundations program that we guide you through to actually We ask you the questions, we fill this stuff in for you and show you what the canvas looks like at your target destination. And then we help you reverse engineer it down to make sure that we have prices that are going to actually allow you to thrive. Now, once you look at that number, oftentimes because we ballparked and we added everything in, that number can be intimidating, right? Because you're thinking like, man, I can't charge $250 for the gym my regular CrossFit gym membership when everyone down the street is charging $175. Well, this is where we now have to start taking into consideration that there's more to it than just your core membership. And this is where a lot of gym owners struggles because they are just banking on, well, if I get 100 members at this dollar amount, then I'll be great. The money and the profitability and all the gravy is really in the other things, the upsells, the retail, and so on, that where we're raising average client value by doing these other initiatives that applies across the board. So again, we'll show you how to do this in the Foundations program, in the Money Map exercise, but we need to also account for these other revenue streams within the business that are going to contribute to that so that we can offset the pricing enough to where, hey, with even just a little bit of effort in retail and selling, just a handful of nutrition upsells or individual programs, I can now hit this stride easily. And now if I just increase those sales, my profitability will go way up. And now that's when you can start actually increasing the profitability percentage.
Very cool. For anybody who wants any resources on offering nutrition at your box, we had a couple of great episodes. One with Mike T. Nelson, who offers the Flex Diet certification. Mm-hmm. And that would be for somebody who's looking to get really geeky in depth into how to offer the best sort of flexible dieting offer to your members. Mm-hmm. The other one would be Michael Caju's company, WAG. And they're coming out with a new product to help gym owners integrate this into their product suite as well. So mm-hmm. definitely go and check out to those guys. Then we have another guest coming in the following weeks. Actually, I don't remember her last name. Marcus, do you remember her name?
We're talking about Nicole. I believe it's pronounced
Nicole.
Upcoin.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
HSN.
She also has a great program. So we'll have a lot of those for you on our blog, and I'll link to them in the show notes also. Cool. So okay, Marcus, so let's say, as a gym owner, I now realize I have to raise my prices up $100 or something to have a profitable business. Mm-hmm. Emily Cabral, owner of Chalkline CrossFit, actually asked this question in the network earlier. She said, assuming we are providing incredible value for this higher price, how can we best articulate this value to people who come in and question why they're so much higher? And also, how do you articulate it to your current members?
Very good question. Emily, this all comes down to your sales process and the experience that you're providing people as they're first coming in contact with your brand, your sales funnel and the whole pipeline and everything that leads to that. So it actually starts with the marketing that you're doing, making sure that's in alignment with the value. Then you have a sales experience that matches that value. So creating something that's really personal, really involved, and to where you're actually really connecting with that person on an individual level. At the end of the day, we're in the relationship game. And if you want to really play the perceived value game, it's about quality of connection and truly understanding who your target client is who this prospective member is, and being able to connect with them, building trust with them, identifying what is it they want, why it matters to them, when they want to accomplish it by, showing them a phenomenal coaching experience, and being a professional all the way through, but being a professional in a very personal way. And that in itself is already going to create that air of higher value. And really, again, just connecting with them on all these unique fronts is going to increase their perceived value. And then when it comes to, why do we charge more? It's because, look, at the end of the day, our goal is not to sell a gym membership. Our goal is to actually help you get where you're trying to go. And there's more to it than just the workouts. We've learned that the nutrition factor, although everyone kind of logically understands that it plays a role in this, is actually critical in your success, which is why we include, our nutrition jumpstart program and have additional options for you to work one-on-one with a coach to get custom assistance and accountability with that. And, rather than everyone doing a workout like this, we have individualization. You can get into, again, like I said at the top of the show, what it is that you offer and that is a part of your service suite that does make you different. Now, if you're just charging more and the service isn't actually any different than what they're doing, you need to take a look at that and figure out what is it that we can quantify or that we can add in as a line item that is of value and does resonate with your why and with your target client, so that you have that specific thing that you can point to, like the Nutrition Jumpstart program I use as an example for the nutrition program.
Great. I think that kind of answers Gabrielle Bogger's question. She's the owner of GB Training Centers. She wanted to know how we can compete with Anytime Fitness, Planet Fitness, a lot of those global gyms that charge like $2.50 for a monthly membership. So she thinks that people tend to want to look for the lowest deal. I think the answer would be fairly similar, but I would add on to that you also want to point out, if people are literally coming to you and saying, I could go to an Anytime Fitness for $7, why should I pay $200 to come to yours? Just pointing out all of the issues that people traditionally have with training at a global gym, and just being specific towards those objections. Like, it's not fun. You're by yourself. There's no community, even though they're not coming in for the community, just kind of pointing out the reasons why it doesn't tend to work out very well for people who try to go about it on their own.
100%. And I'd also add to that if that's a consistent thing that you're getting, Gabrielle, I would take a hard look at your marketing efforts as well, because you may be setting yourself up for failure by offering low barrier deals or really gimmicky style ads just to get lead flow, because leads make us feel good, like, oh, look, I'm doing something right. But attracting 1,000 of the wrong person doesn't make it worth your time. I'd rather have 10 really good leads that are a great fit, that cost me more money to get, but I can turn each one of those people into a long-standing member that buys all my stuff and loves what I do, and I can knock it out of the park for them, than 1,000 leads of people who aren't actually in alignment with our values, what we do. And although, yes, I feel good because I've got a bunch of opportunities and I could try to sell them, you're barking up the wrong tree, right? And so I would also look at what we're doing on the front end.
So last question on pricing that I have here. And again, if you guys have any specific questions on pricing, just give us an ask. And if there's any time at the end, we will answer them. If not, we'll go into the network and type it out old school style. But this is another controversial question. Published pricing or not published pricing? What are your thoughts?
I think it's a matter of commoditization and understanding that when you do publish your prices, you're allowing the uneducated consumer. When I say uneducated, I mean that they don't understand what you do and how it necessarily applies to them and what the value actually is, because you're allowing them to make the decision and just compare you to other people because they don't understand why you're different. And although you can write it on your website and that may affect some, the challenge here is that the uneducated consumer, what that means is when we don't understand something well enough, we like to just put it into generalized buckets of what we have learned thus far. Well, we in this industry all know that most consumers have a pretty skewed understanding of value around what being healthy and fit and how what that actually means to a person to actually achieve those goals. It's not just the cheapest gym membership, which is what they've been conditioned and socialized to look for. They think that it's just, hey, going to the gym is supposed to suck. I'm supposed to pay very little for it. I should expect to basically fail most of the time. And that's that little voice in the back of their head that's been conditioned over a lifetime. So if you let that voice take the steering wheel, you're going to lose. And you're only going to get people then who are shopping on price and or can read between the lines, which is few and far between. So all that said, personally, I'm not a fan of publishing the prices because I think it's far more important to just put the benefits out there as to what it is that you do and create a compelling story and make sure your brand looks and feels the part on the front end, and give them enough information to want them to reach out to you. But you need the opportunity to actually connect with that person on an individual level and get to know who they are, what they've done, what they want, what's important to them, so that you can efficiently or successfully align what it is that you do with their unique application. And that approach in itself will already completely change the conversation around value, because you're able to put the ball back in your court and help create a controlled experience rather than what they're doing with 5 tabs open and shopping for the cheapest price. That's not even the person you want.
Cool. Do you have any pros for publishing pricing?
In this business? No.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Aside from it'll make you feel better, because it's usually just because someone has a deep aversion to, like, oh, I hate it when people don't publish prices. I feel like they've got something to hide. That's a deeper issue.
Okay, that's another show. the deep issues. Okay, great. Let's move on to policies. We're at minute 45 now, and this is probably the least sexy, but the most exciting part of our show. So in policies, we're talking about membership contracts, perhaps any SOPs that might help your business run a little bit smoother. I know that a lot of policies and contracts, I mean, we're not made of money here, so sometimes you will borrow policies or borrow from competing gyms. Yeah. A lot of gyms will do this 3, 6, 9 month contracts. Also, again, maybe not with any strategy behind it. A lot of gyms don't have any contracts at all. So how about we start off, Marcus, with just explaining why we would even want to have these policies or contracts in place in the first place.
Awesome. So first and foremost, having an easy to understand cancellation policy, hold policy, if it's something that you offer. And even if you don't, you have to clarify that. And what you're doing with renewals. So those are the big ones. Cancellations, holds, renewals. We want to make sure we have identified. And obviously, and when we're talking about like legal contracts here, you could lump in the waiver. That's a whole different conversation. You want to make sure you have a waiver that protects you from liability and all that separate combo. We're talking specifically about the policies around your service suite, right? So your membership contracts and so on. So now we got to look at, are you offering contracts or not contracts? This is a hot topic that is constantly on the forefront. I see it here in the network and in many other forums that I'm in. Should I offer them or not? And often people are like, I've tried contracts. It didn't work for me. And the reason why it doesn't work for you most of the time is because you said, hey, I need contracts. So you Googled CrossFit gym contracts, or you went to another gym that offers contracts and you just said, well, what are they doing? Cool, I'll just do that. You didn't design it around who you are, what you believe in, and what is appropriate for your target demographic. Remember, you're the owner of the gym. You get to choose what those policies look like. So when you're talking about contracts, you don't have to just go with what the boilerplate template is for most, because frankly, if you take a look at that and you understand the range that you have in designing a contract, what most people go with is that like extreme end, hardcore, militant style contract where it's like, hey, you're signing up for a 12-month agreement, and if you decide 3 months in that you want to quit, you still owe us the balance and I'll take you to collections. When you ask the gym owner, like, are you comfortable with that? They're like, hell no, I'm not. I don't want to take anyone to collections. I'm in the relationship game. And so the problem there is simply that they chose the wrong contract model for their application just because they thought, I need a contract and I use that. And the reality is that you can actually design it, and there's a whole range of options when you understand the mechanics of it that you can pull from to piece together what's perfectly appropriate for you so that you believe in it, it makes sense with your values, and something that you can actually enforce. And now you have contracts that are going to be something that you can actually support. And the reason why contracts are even so important is, for one, whether you want to hear this or not, your business is worth the value of your used equipment only. If you could have 300 members paying you $200 a month, your business is worth your used equipment value if those people aren't on contracts. So understanding that you can't get a loan, getting investors down the road, if you want to go into multiple locations or you want to buy a building, all of those like longer game strategies are off the table if you don't have these things in place. Because as far as your investors or bankers are concerned, they're going to look at it and they're like, hey, that's great, but you could walk into the gym tomorrow, throw your middle finger up and say something offensive, and everyone can walk out and your business is upside down and erased off the earth in a month, right? And to them, that risk is too high, so no thank you. Right? So there's value in that. But if you want to put your coach's hat on for a second and just look at it, how most of the owners listening to this and evaluating this are probably looking at it, is like, the value is that when people make an agreement based on a goal, so if you're setting goals with people and saying, hey, look, your goal was to lose those 20 pounds by the time you go on that cruise in August with your buddies, and it's going to, based on you being able to come in here 3-4 days a week, and if we make some adjustments to your nutrition, I think we should be able to accomplish that in about 4 to 6 months. If you can stay consistent, we'll work with you on that. And, is that what you want to do? Yes. Great. We offer 6 and 12-month memberships. Our 6-month membership is going to help you obviously get to your goal. If you're going to go on your cruise and have a good time, and like most of the people here, they end up sticking around a long time so you can come back, keep a good thing going, which one you want to go with. You're making it about the goal and their specific application. And then you can walk them through how the contracts work. Like, hey, look, we've got them structured this way. Here's why, because again, it makes sense to you. People can sense when you believe in what you're talking about, rather than when you're like, we've got, 6-month or 12-month agreement in the contract. If you decide you got to quit, it's going to be pretty brutal on the way out. And like, but if they can sense that you don't believe it, then it's going to come across exactly how it feels to you, as a really strict, kind of crappy feeling contract. People don't want to be stuck in those kinds of contracts. But when it's based on, hey, your goal was this, we give it, we're a small business. It makes our life easier. We know you're going to be around here for a while. Not to mention, we want to incentivize you to work off of your goals and actually achieve your goal. So we offer a discount for, let's say, our 6 and our 12-month option. And you go through the spiel I went through a moment ago. You by default already address the issue, right? So you have policies that you believe in, and now you can get people to choose a contract agreement based on a goal, and it's not just this crazy hardcore thing, right? So I know I kind of went all over on that, but the point is that you get to choose your own adventure. You just have to make sure that it makes sense for who you are, the kind of relationships you want to be able to manage, and so that you don't feel like this evil villain when it comes to asking for the membership or enforcing it.
So let's say, as a gym owner now, I have a very reasonable contract that works for me. Drew Cost, owner at Conquer Fitness United.
Hey, Drew.
He wants to know, how do you actually enforce it? And I'd love a personal story from you, if you would. Like, how would you personally deal with somebody who is defaulting and needs to pay up?
Well, for one, I think that the biggest error in this is that a lot of people the contract is just the small print and that little thing they have them sign on the iPad or on the computer when they sign up, and everyone just checks the box. I understand, click. I think the first problem that you can solve is by addressing it thoroughly right when someone signs up, and doing so in a way to where I actually would extract those key points around cancellation, holds, and renewals, and I put them into a separate, big, simple, plain English thing that they can sign, an initial, and I would talk them through it and make sure that they understand and they have the ability to ask any questions right there on the spot when they're signing up. And I would make that a key part of my process. So step one is setting the foundation and setting the expectations right out of the gate, and making sure that happens 100% of the time, so that you can cite that conversation and the written contract, not just, hey, you signed a contract, you didn't read the fine print, that's your fault. You're being ridiculous. Nobody reads that stuff. So, because most of it is just legal jargon. So pull the parts out that actually matter and that could screw up your relationship, and address them firsthand. If that's being done, those conversations are already going to be easier. But this again comes down to, if you're getting an uproar when you're having to enforce your contract, it means that it's not in alignment with you and your clients. You probably have something in place that's not appropriate. You probably have something that you may have borrowed from someone else. You're like, hey, that sounds pretty cool, I'll just do that. And the reality is that when someone makes that, if you're selling the membership just based on, hey, you can get the biggest discount if you choose this membership, it's a 12-month contract, people are already looking at it as like, yeah, I can get out of that. I can figure out if I don't like it, I know I can kind of bully my way out of this and threaten a shitty Yelp review or whatever it is. And this is where I think getting really personal with the person as they're exiting is also a critical part of this, is that if someone's deciding to leave your tribe, that for one, you should be doing an exit interview anyway, whether that's in a survey form, in the form on your website when they're submitting it, but at very least even following up with a personal call and being like, hey, Jessica, I saw that you submitted your cancellation. You've been doing great with the program. I just wanted to learn a little bit more about what happened. And, get into the why of what happened. And then say, well, as you know, when you first joined up, you got the discount for making the 12-month commitment rather than our regular membership, which is about $25 a month higher. Walk them through the policy and be like, I hope you can understand, we make our decisions. We gave you that discount based on that. And, and this is the penalty. Try to use different language, but that's why we have this in place. So if you decided that you wanted to go, we understand. If you don't want to be here, if you don't feel like this is going to get you to where you want to go, by all means, that's why we've created it this way. And this is where your policies need to be fair. They need to make sense to someone in that position, right? So again, if you're like, yeah, I have this arbitrary $500 fine for you canceling, or someone's like, dude, I'm canceling $150 membership and I've got to pay $650 to get out of it. That's ridiculous. right? That's ridiculous to anyone. It may look great on paper, and when you put the contracts in place, you're thinking, man, this is awesome. But it's not, you're never going to be able to do that without completely burning that relationship. It's scorched, it's done. And you're going to have bad press in your local area. And it didn't sit right with you either anyway, right? So, but personal stories with that, when I was first experimenting with this stuff, we played around with our policies too, and different types of cancellation, whether it was just the arbitrary fee, like, hey, you can cancel anytime, and then there's just a flat, $250 fee, or it's a percentage of remaining balance, or if you're within 3 months of this, then you get that. Like, you play around with all of it and you see what works. But at the end of the day, you are in the relationship business. So understand this, that if it warrants you being flexible, or you realize like, hey, this just is not worth that fight. And this is a little bit more of an advanced thing. So don't just use this as an excuse to just bypass your own policy anytime that you feel so. But remember, you have the power to be the hero too, right? So if it's someone who was like, hey, I was, training here, I loved it, but I broke my ankle when we were doing sprints, and now like I can't do this stuff anymore, or it hurts me too much. Like, don't be an a-hole and hold them to that, right? Or if someone gets transferred from work last minute, they're like, I didn't realize I was getting transferred. When I signed up, I got relocated to an hour away, and this is where, again, your policies need to make sense with all of those different scenarios. So this is actually one of my favorite parts of the program, is where we go through, we optimize the full service suite, core services, premium services, and then we get to go through and redesign these policies. And it's such a relief to most gym owners, because they're like, I didn't know that I could do it that way. And the reality is that you can. And you get to choose your own adventure, and you get to write the rules of this thing. And then obviously you want to just run it by a local attorney to make sure that it makes sense and you're not, stepping on any local laws or anything. But more often than not, you can put together whatever is going to make sense to you and to your clients and roll with it from there.
Do you have any tips for moving members onto contracts?
Well, that's going to be totally dependent on what the culture is at that gym. And that's something that I'm very cautious in applying retroactively to an existing member base. We have a whole strategy. It could be a 3-month rollout, a 6-month rollout. It is not something you just rip the Band-Aid off and do without there being collateral damage. You could get lucky, but more often than not, this is not handled as delicately as it warrants that you should. And it causes problems, which is, again, why people have there's a bad stigma around implementing contracts. But in most cases, what I do is I say, well, let's start with just all new members are going to be on this deal, right? On the new pricing model with the new policies and all that. And for the existing people, we're going to figure out our moonlight strategy. So it could be that we're going to allow them a period of time. Hey, we're going to, you're on an older membership. We're going to let that ride, and we're going to build a wake of increased perceived value. Again, part of what we do in this program is to show you how to actually do that, so that we can start building the value to where they're like, man, I'm only paying $150. I know the prices are now, $200, and we've got these different agreements. Then we can create the transition and have far better results. And we've done it with gyms that have hundreds of members and had next to no fallout. And the increased revenue and getting people into those agreements is such a relief for the owner. And they look at the revenue, they're like, I just jumped up, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 in recurring revenue per month by making this small adjustment. Yes, I lost 3 members in the process, but I can now service my other 185 members so much better because I can pay my staff better. I can pay my rent. And again, it's unique, dependent on that gym's vibe and the gym owner and where they are in their journey and what their unique selling proposition is. So we do that custom for each person if it's appropriate.
I personally went through a price hike at your gym. I remember this many years ago. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was a really cool experience because Marcus had branded this group of us who were his early people. I think you were charging like $99 a month or something ridiculous, early start prices. And we thought we were grandfathered into it, but we also didn't know that everybody else was being charged much more as the business went on. You know, we never went back to the website and checked the pricing. So it was nice to get, again, over communicated to, and also branded as, I think you guys called us the super secret bro club, where we got super secret pricing. Now that I see behind the veil, is that as cool? But
I gotcha.
Yeah. But I remember every line item, like we have a new water cooler, it costs this much a month. We have a couple new coaches, it costs this much more. Just in the very like style that you communicated it to us, I remember feeling it was a very respectable kind of like back and forth. So it wasn't just a, hey, we have to do this because we need to keep the business in check. It seemed like we were a part of the family and that we were entitled to know why. So 100%. that was my experience.
Yeah, and you know, and for the record, no, it wasn't $99, but it was a substantial jump. I think it was like a 20% jump for those initial people who came on. And so, you know, part of the strategy when we make that transition is building that wake of value, right? So the few examples you gave, but like, hey, as you notice, we've been doing more social events, and we've rolled out our regular workshops, and doing this, we want to continue to be the best gym in the Mission Viejo area. In order to do so, you know, we've raised our prices for new members several months back. We've kept you where you're at. You're a loyal member. So for you, and I think what we did was we actually had you guys meet us, like at a percentage of the way there. So instead of forcing everyone to go the full jump, because it was a pretty big jump, that we said like, hey, you know, because you're a loyal member, instead of you going to the new $200 price point, we're going to have you land at the $175, but it still raised our average client value on a group of like 50 initial members up $25 per, which is substantial, right? That created a lot of additional revenue, and it took the pressure off and stopped screwing up our average client value, which is what we were working on building.
Again, I'm seeing a through line through all of these, the pricing, the programming, and the policies, that if you really understand your story and can clearly, effectively communicate that to people, it just creates more opportunities for you to be able to share exactly what you do and why. Because especially with the situation we're talking about now with people that have been at your gym for years and years, this story it's something they forget, you know, they just kind of become a part of the machine, you know, and there's a lot of moving parts. And to take every opportunity that you can to reinstill like why we do what we do, and we're still trying really hard and all that can be a really great way to ignite fires as well as make some more money. So it seems like kind of a win-win for everybody.
100%. You know, it's the whole transparency marketing approach. And, you know, you got to remember, what tends to happen in this for most gym owners is they start off super personal and they're like, I've got to be more of a businessman, and they become super impersonal, and then they try to like eventually make their way back to be somewhere in the middle. And it's at the end of the day, you want to make sure that those members feel like they're a part of what you're doing, that you guys are a united front as a gym moving forward on this bigger mission, so that when things change, we're adding programs or we're raising prices or whatever it may be, they understand enough about it. You don't need to show them how the watch is made, but they need to understand why what time it is matters, right? And so that they're a part of the journey, which means and then that way when you break it down to the ridiculous with like, hey, we've done all these new things, and, you know, the new price is going to be, you know, although it's $20 higher, that only breaks down to like, you know, 65 additional cents per day for us to continue to invest in the gym, adding equipment, doing these great workshops, and investing in you, our members, to get the best results possible. We hope that's not too much for you. Let me know if you have additional questions. Someone who feels like they're a part of the process and gets that, they're going to go, yeah, that would be pretty ridiculous for me to question that. And although you may think like a $20 price increase, like to them, when they look at what they're getting, if their perceived value is way up here and your price point is here, and then you're like, hey, I'm just going to ask you to pay here, it's a laydown. And that's the whole game we want to play when we are transitioning from an older model to a new model pricing wise. First, raise the perceived value and do it in a way to where it's trackable. Right? So not just like, hey, you didn't notice we did this and we did that. And if it's also, you're doing it in ways that you may care about, but they don't care about. Often also a common mistake is that they're like, dude, I added all this new stuff and we added all these things, and people are like, dude, I can't come to those additional classes. I only come to 5:30. So I don't care that you added 4 time slots in the middle of the day. Like, good for you. Like, use other members for that. Like, why do I have to pay for that? So using the wrong things to justify why you're raising a price point is also can also be a mistake.
Great. Okay, so we're coming up on the hour mark. We've covered a lot.
Mm-hmm.
To summarize this, what do you think one piece of advice would be if somebody, I mean, there's a whole mess of things that they can take from this, but what would you think would be the most important takeaway from this whole show?
I think that the takeaway here is that if you are looking at your programs, your pricing, your policies, and you know something's not right, take action. Be willing to do the work to figure out what is the better price point, where do I need to be, and be willing to take those steps, because if you don't, it is the definition of insanity. You can't keep doing that same thing. If it is literally impossible for you to ever have a profit or ever able to pay yourself or pay your staff, which you know you should be paying them for doing a great job with your members on, every day, then you're just going to continue going on hope. And that's not how business works, right? You need to be able to take a look at this and say, this is not working, and I'm going to take the steps necessary to actually fix this. So I'm going to figure out who I am, who I want to serve, and sit down and do the math on what it takes to actually execute my vision and what I want to be able to provide for people. And then, what do I need to make to be able to continue doing this long term? And again, you don't have to go for your goal salary right out of the gate. We can work on that by growing and selling more of these things down the road. And figure out what it is that I need to be doing. And if you don't feel like you have the skill set to do it, then get help. Have someone who can help you do that come in, because the cost that person will be to help you solve that problem is a fraction of the benefit that will actually have on you, not just your business, but you personally, the peace of mind knowing that every membership you sell, you're not painting yourself further into the corner. And instead you're able to actually know that, hey, I'm going to get myself into a healthier and healthier position the further and further I go down this track, rather than I'm just getting tired and burning out and I don't see a light at the end of this tunnel.
Great. Thank you. Okay, guys. That's about it for us. We're running a little over time. So if you have any questions on anything that we had talked about today, go ahead and write them in the comments below. Mm-hmm. And definitely check out our Beta Foundations program. Again, it's not officially being rolled out into the general public just yet. We're only taking 15 gym owners to walk them through how to get new leads, how to really define their perceived value, definitely all of the things that we had talked about today. Basically how to save your gym. If you feel like you're not seeing a profit, if you haven't gotten any good leads in a while, if your core members are starting to lose, their zest for what you're doing, or you're just feeling underwhelmed with the product that you're putting out there and the vibe and everything, this program is definitely something you're going to want to check out. So if you're interested in that, you can go to gymwright.com/beta and you'll see all the information you need to know there.
Yep. And thanks, Jess. And since this is a beta group, we have a whole team of incredible coaches here at Gymwright. But I'm going to be personally taking this initial beta group on myself as we launch this program. So if you're interested in working with us and interested in working with me, I would love the opportunity to chat with you more about it. Like Jessica said, we're going to be taking only 15 people into this. We've already had a ton of inquiries as it is. And we're going to be choosing the people are going to be selected based on, their motivation to actually grow their business or fix their business. And we want to make sure that we're a great fit for you. But visit gymwright.com/beta, check it out. And by the way, in case you haven't been there in a while, we've put up a brand new site. It's much prettier than what we had before.
So sexy.
Right? It's super sexy. And check out the program. Let us know if you have any questions. We'd love to work with you. We'd love to hear from you. And get in there quick. I have a feeling that this is going to fill up very quickly. So don't hesitate. Check it out. Very least get on a strategy session. That's where you'll actually talk to me directly. We'll get to know you, where you're at, what you want to accomplish, and I'll walk you through the whole thing.
Sounds good. Awesome. I think we're good to go.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Jessica, for joining us and very much running this show. It was fun to kind of be on the other side of the table.
I know, I miss you. We have to do this in person one day.
Right? We just got to get you back out here to California. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you for joining us for another episode, and we will see you here again next week. Bye-bye.